Welcome to the Town of Emmitsburg Town Workshop for the night of Monday, March 18th, 2024. At this time, I would please request that you silence your cell phones so that everybody in the room can attend to the matter at hand. And at this time, I invite you to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Future meetings coming up. We have Board of Appeals on March 19th at 7 p.m. in the town office. Our comprehensive workshop is March 25th at 7 p.m. in the town office or via Zoom. Our Planning Commission meeting is March 26th at 7 p.m. in the town office or via Zoom. And finally, our next Board of Commissioners meeting will be April 1st, April Fools, 7 p.m. town office and via Zoom. Are there any other meetings that commissioners that I forgot to mention? No? Okay. All right. Commissioner comments. Do we have any commissioners who would like to speak tonight? Nope. 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 I'm good. We'll move on to mayor comments. We're good. All right. Moving right along. Moving into our agenda items. Very first one is discussion and review of the water rates.
You want to start with the presentation or is that,
Yes.
then we can go from there?
Sure.
All right. Okay, we put together a PowerPoint presentation. Most of it is based off of questions that we received from the commissioners and just some other information that staff thought would be helpful in regards to the water rate. We can switch over there. I always wanted to say this. Next slide, please. Yeah. Just our discussion points, what we want to do. We want to give a brief history, talk about the current situation, the plan that is in place, the future projects, and how do we get there, and then a discussion at the end. Okay. As you can see, the last water rate increase before the one we did last year was in 2006, and that was an increase of from $32.50 to $35. And this represents a 3/4 inch meter, which you'll see further in the slide, represents most of the community. And there we listed the reasons for the increase. And we had a large sewer rate increase, the market crashed, the cost of living went up, and of course, COVID. Our current wastewater treatment plant, our daily capacity is 398,000 gallons. And that is that would give us 1,592 available taps. And that's based off 250 gallons per day per tap. And is that governed by the state? Is that who gives us, is that a state or a federal regulations staff, somebody? State regulation. So for every tap, we have to have 250 gallons of water that we can guarantee per tap. Our daily average is 270,000 gallons. And that means we're using 1,370 taps. Now, we don't have that many households, but there are some businesses and apartment buildings that have more than one tap. So that's where we come with that number. So the available daily water that we have right now as we speak is 55,500 gallons, which would give us 222 available new taps. So with the allocated taps that we have for new projects right now, you can see we have 5 there going to Federal Stone, 5 to the new distillery, and 3 to Southgate. So that's what's allocated. Oh, I'll go to the next page. I'm sorry, 10 for Brookfield and 5 for Worthing's Court. So with that being said, we actually have 194 available taps. And the only project, well, we have two now because we just received some extra stuff today, but we have the Emmett Ridge 2, which we did receive a rough sketch. That's all we have so far on that. And that would be 48 taps for 48 single family homes. And Christ Community Church, which we're taking a rough estimate. It's going to be somewhere between 3 and 5 taps for that. So that would leave us 190, probably about 191 available taps off of what the water that we have right now. The next slide shows what our water balances have been for the last several years. I don't have to read that one to you. For the 2024, though, I do have the stars beside that because you have to remember we did put the $300,000 in there from the ARPA fund. The next slide just shows the projected income for the next 5 years if we stayed with the current plan that was voted on last year by the council. And those numbers are based off of the first 2 quarters of FY 24. And then we just increase those by 36% each year. So that's what would be estimated there. Now that doesn't show what we're going to put into the fund because it doesn't take out expenses, but that's what the extra funds that we would collect each year. And the next slide is kind of a breakdown of our water meters and the gallonage use and the average increase for the customers within those ranges. So as you can see, the majority of our customers are going to be using a 3/4 inch meter. And you can see what the average increase was for those users. And I'm not going to read all that to you. So you can take some time to digest that. And then as you go on to the next page, we go up to the higher users with that 3/4 inch meter. And it also has listed the number of customers that are within that usage amount. That is per quarter. That's per quarter. So that's what, yes, yes. And then the next page, it goes up to the next meter sizes, the 1, the 1.5, the 2. And if you look at the bottom of that page, we do have, when you're adding the numbers together of customers, we do have 6 accounts that are not charged. And that is 3 accounts for the town and 3 for the fire department. This was done years and years ago for the fire department because they thought it was kind of strange that they would charge the fire department to fill the fire trucks up after they come back from a fire. So that's why the fire department does not get charged water. And that was way, way, way before my time. So I don't want you to think that I snuck that one by on you. And then the next page of the cost breakdown just goes to the larger meters. You can see there are very few customers there. That's your big commercials, the Provincial House Fire Academy, and those types of customers. So what we saw for 84% of the customers, it was less than a $32 increase per quarter, which breaks down to $11 per month or 36 cents per day. So I took my water bill and I had staff contact the 2 surrounding communities, Thurmont and Tawnytown. And for my water usage, which is 13,600 gallons, you can see where my bill compares to if I lived in Thurmont or Tawnytown. And I do want to add there the Thurmont sewer rate is almost doubled of what ours is. but this is just strictly water. And then we have some future water projects that we know about that's coming up. Of course, a 16-inch line coming from the water plant to the town, and that's going to probably be in the area of $10 million. The Waynesboro Pike water line replacement, that's going to be around $1 million. The same way with the 500 to 800 block of West Main Street. And then we go to the North Seaton Avenue from Northgate to Route 15 water line replacement is probably also going to be right around $1 million. So they're the ones that we know about. And the one thing that this doesn't include, because we didn't have a good cost, was the repairs that are going to be needed at Rainbow Lake for the spillway. It looks like right now that the cost for just the inspection of the spillway, which we feel that we should get a total inspection done. The inspection itself is going to be about $70,000. Here's also some other future water fund projects, and these were basically based on increasing our water supply, and that's wells in the treatment plant, a partnership with Mount St. Mary's, a new water line from the Mount St. Mary's to Annandale Road, new water meter technology, update current water treatment plant, and of course, the Emmett Gardens water treatment plant that has been planned for quite a number of years. The next slide is just some side notes. Our current agreement with the Mount St. Mary's is we can get 100,000 gallons per day at the current water rate. That's an agreement. I think we have quite a few years left on that agreement, I believe. So just with saying that, that 100,000 gallons, divide that by 250, that would give us somewhere around 400 more water taps that would be available for us if they've got the when and if they get their water up to where it needs to be. Our sewer plant capacity is 750,000 gallons per day. Our current average use right now is 372,000 gallons. So that means that we have 1,511 sewer taps, but I took off the 28 allocated water taps. I also took that off in the sewer. So right now we have 1,483 sewer taps available. So the sewer plant is in pretty good shape. And then we have some options. Of course, we can stay with the current water rate plan. We can restructure the current water rate plan. We can rely on grants and other funding sources. And Commissioner Hoover didn't like where I put in there and said, and pray, because that's what it is. We have to pray because we have to we're competing with everybody else for those grants. We can promote growth. We can pass the problem on to the next council, or we can do a combination of several. So that's some of our possible solutions that I saw. And like I say, we tried to address all the questions that you offered to, or that you asked us to try to find. And we know that this discussion is going to have more questions, and you're going to need more facts and figures. And staff is here hopefully to be able to answer those now. If not, we'll get them for you as quickly as possible. And before we move on, I just want to thank all of our staff for the time they put into this. None of these figures were readily available because they've never been asked to do anything like this before, but they put their nose down and they worked together and worked really hard. And we're able to put this together for you. So we're ready for some questions.
I've got one or two. So most of the, I sent you some questions earlier, Mr. Mayor. Most of them I think have been answered with the capacity and all that with the chart that you all provided. So thank you. The Worthing's Court, I think you can scratch those 5.
I think that's top on the list.
Yeah, you can scratch.
It's a good neighborhood.
You scratch them.
Worthing's Court runs right behind the mayor's or the former mayor's house.
I got agreement to buy the land. The Mount St. Mary's property I'm sorry, the Mount St. Mary's water you talked about. Originally, that was never expected to be part of our capacity calculation, more or less as an emergency kind of to go back to. So I'd be a little bit concerned if we rely on that as capacity to get that, I forget the number you said, for the additional taps. That would be my concern there, but and at the moment, I think that's all I have at the moment. I got some other questions unrelated to your slide though, but I'll let the other commissioners fill in here a minute. I'm done for the minute. Yeah.
Commissioners on this side? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. It's impressive and helpful and especially clear. Regarding priorities, I'm looking at the future water fund projects. And I'm looking at the 16-inch line coming down from the reservoir to town as the top of the list. In my view, that's our highest priority, but is that staff's view at this time, or has that prioritization occurred yet?
No, we didn't put it, I didn't put anything in priority list.
Okay,
I guess you could say I started with the most expensive, if you want to look at it that way.
sure, absolutely. Okay, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Turnquist or Commissioner Sweeney, questions? Are you still thinking?
I think I'm still digesting.
Okay, yeah.
It's a lot.
I'll take a stab at a question. I have a lot of digesting too, having seen this for the first time. Under the future water fund projects, I know some of this has been in the line for a while. And I think what do we currently have lined up as far as grants under any of these projects currently, if anything at all?
None. So we did apply to MDE for the 16-inch main water line during the this year's process, and we didn't rank high enough. So we are going to try again with another grant that's opening up through the state. The problem with Waynesboro Pike and North Seaton Avenue is they are outside of the priority funding area because they are outside of town. So that limits funding agencies because certain ones will not fund if it is not in the priority funding area. So
our main water plant, so for the town, so I don't wonder why they consider that out of, I know it's out of the town, but usually the water plants in shore town, for all the towns are out of town limit, most of them are.
right, but these water lines are outside of the priority funding area. So USDA is one that does not fund in the outside of the area. So we basically need a priority list on these and then have Maddie start working on grant funding.
Mr. President?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Thank you. One thing I think to consider for the grant piece is, and this is recollection, so I may stand to be corrected. The Waynesboro Pike work would be closer to the Pennsylvania line above Tract Road. Is that correct? Like beyond Tract Road on Main Street?
It goes from Jared. What? Right. Right.
So if I recall correctly from our comprehensive plan in the county, our growth boundary ends at Tract Road with Pembroke Woods. So that would be out of our growth boundary, but I believe that the North Seaton Avenue line is still within our growth boundary, yet out of the municipality. Is that accurate, or do you recall?
I'd have to pull a
Okay, fair
comprehensive
enough.
plan,
Fair enough.
but the growth boundary and the priority funding area are two separate
Sure,
things when it
absolutely.
comes to grant funding.
I just think it would be easier perhaps with the North Seaton Avenue versus the Waynesboro Pike is kind of what I'm alluding to. So just a thought.
Mhm.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Can you explain what would entail, what is the definition of priority funding area? Is it just within town limits or is it?
Typically, it's within town limits. It's priority funding areas are set by the funding agencies. And for us, I have to pull that one up, but it's typically within our town boundary.
Is the 500 and the 600, 500 to 800 block West Main, is that from the Doughboy out to the town boundary?
I have to pull the map. Oh, what are you talking,
No,
for Waynesboro Pike?
No, it's the
500 to 800.
Oh, yeah.
500 West Main Street.
That'd be from the Doughboy down to the convenience store.
Oh, that also goes to me, that's where the boundaries stop, right?
No, the boundaries.
Cuts over there, there's, the water line boundaries, I mean, I don't mean the development boundaries, I meant the water line. That runs up past
The water line continues, but
yes.
Up Main
it's
Street.
Outside the town limits, where's the town limit stops? Right there at the end of at the convenience store, doesn't it? Is that
No,
what you put-
no, Main Street is within the town limits,
Right.
out the track
Yeah.
road. The
Is that
cemetery is
Waynesboro
not.
Pike?
cemetery is not in the town limits,
And,
but Main Street is. Right?
how far?
Main
south?
Street
I'm
is.
sorry?
Main Street is in the town limits. That's how it's all connected, I
Yeah,
believe.
the Main Street is,
Mhm.
All the way out the track.
that's across. Right, but our priority thing stops at convenience store. The-
Yeah,
Maybe.
the priority funding area, it is the town boundary. I'm looking at it on the state planning website. It does include, it's hard to tell, the liquor store, and then all of Brookfield and Timber Mill Run down to Track Road.
But doesn't cover Waynesboro Pike, no,
No,
so it stops right there somewhere.
it
Near the
stops
town
right there at
outside.
Track Road.
Yeah.
Stops at Track Road.
I'm talking about the main road itself, where the water line runs.
So Main Street would have to be out of town at Timber Mill, I guess. That's how the cemetery is out of town.
Right.
Yes. Our town sign for the town on that end is where the boundaries stop, correct? I think,
Close.
Mhm.
somewhere right there.
It's close.
Where you turn into Brookfield.
Yeah, because the Fitzgerald Farm is not
Not
in the town
I
limits, right?
think the road is not in the town limits. That's why that's not in the priority area. That's part of Waynesboro Pike water line is out that way.
Right.
Yeah, it goes clear out to the Wances.
Right.
Mhm.
But MDE does fund projects that are not in the priority funding area. They funded,
So the North Seaton it would fund. North Seaton would be funded. North Seaton and North Gate. Water line replacement.
well, that goes out, that North Seaton Avenue is from North Gate out to Route 15. Right, so the town ends there,
Right.
right.
I did talk to our delegates and told them that we would have some funding needs
Mhm.
next year. So they're expecting us to put in for something next year, hopefully to tackle one or two of those projects.
Why do we have to cover the cost from the edge of town out to 15?
We're the water suppliers. It'd be almost like saying, hey, we're going to sell you toothpaste, but you got to bring your own tube. You know, it's kind of like,
But if it's outside of the town boundaries,
well, we're
Doesn't
we're the supplier, you know, we chose somewhere along the line, somebody chose to supply water out that far.
There's some board maybe said that, or the private company that supplied water to town at one point in time may have serviced them.
The
Mhm.
private
when it-
company serviced them.
And then when it rolled into town's ownership, we were obligated to continue providing that service.
But
So
now,
we're
but
providing water to
That's correct.
people that aren't within the town boundaries.
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
The same with Mountain View Road,
Mountain View Road.
Commissioner, the same thing.
same thing with Fire Academy.
Yeah.
But now there is an ordinance now that says no new service be provided to outside facilities. They must be annexed.
Additional questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a question about the sewer. The sewer capacity, and now I don't know what page it was on. Oh, sewer plant capacity, 750,000 gallons per day. I know, and I didn't bring prior agendas with me, but I know prior agendas reports have shown that we were maybe up to 300,000. And, or the report showed that we exceeded the sewer plant capacity so many days during the month.
Yes, that's correct. But on average, current average use is 372,482 per day. So when you look at a calendar year and you look at the average, yeah.
Some days was much less than that. That was.
So it's an average. So there's going to be days of more and days of less.
Well, I think the report that you share says we exceeded the plant capacity this many days in the month of February.
Yes.
So are you saying that number's averaged for the whole year, or is?
No, what we're saying is on those, let's just say 12 days in February, we are over capacity. So on those 12 days in February, we were over the plant's design capacity of 750 gallons per day. But what we're saying is the yearly average, 365 days, the yearly average is 372,482 gallons per day treated at the wastewater treatment plant.
So
Eh,
the reason
sorry.
that you had those spillage, or what do you want to call it, the over 750, you can bet there was a rain, it rained. So that's your storm water,
Like, water goes in from.
that's your wild water running into the system.
I want to add as well, when we do have a rain event,
Jared, can I ask you to come up to the microphone? I'm happy that we have so many staff members here, but if anybody's watching, I don't think they're going to be able to hear. So we want to be able to hear you. Thank you.
when we do have a rain event, our sewer plant's very great in the way we can open up a valve and relieve stress of the water going through the plant. So we can store all of that excess water in separate lagoons. So once the rain event is over, then we can turn pumps on and then we have to treat that water. So if the rain event may have only been 2 days, but that's why you get the 12 days of over plant capacity, is because we have pumps on trying to empty those lagoons out, preparing for the next event. So it's not that the system, our collection system was in bad shape for those 12 days. If that makes sense.
Not sure.
I know we are trying to schedule that tour with you. So I'll have to.
Yeah, that would explain,
find a
that
day.
would explain it much better. I mean, when the rain event comes, you know what I mean? We'll get a whole bunch of water all in 1 or 2 days, but we can't treat that much water all in that time period. So we'll divert 80% of that water to a pond and only treat what we can. And then once the rain and everything calms down, we can turn pumps on and pump those ponds back down. And then we run that water back through the plant.
Right, that's for the water treatment plant.
And that's the
but this
wastewater
is-
plant.
Right, but for the sewer plant,
That's what I'm talking
That's
about.
water treatment, wastewater treatment plant. You're saying the same.
well, we have a water treatment plant and a sewer plant.
Correct,
Okay, so I'm talking about the sewer plant.
right, so.
WTP water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant's up on the mountain between Rainbow Lake and ourselves. Wastewater treatment plant is on the other side of Route 15.
Right, but I'm talking about the sewer plant capacity, which
Okay,
is the wastewater
correct,
treatment plant.
correct.
Right, I
You-
understand.
You got
that.
it, great.
So the sewer plant capacity, because you're talking about treating wild water, but you're talking about the water treatment plant.
No, I'm talking about the sewer plant, the wastewater treatment plant, sewer plant, same place.
Okay.
So the wild water, that's from the ionides. We're trying to cut down on all that. So it's just when we get all that rain gets in the sewer pipes and it shouldn't be, but that's where all that water's coming from.
Okay. Yeah, I think the tour would help. That's on us.
Thank you, Jared. I did have a quick question. I think it was sometime last year we had purchased, or maybe it was received. I'm sorry, you just sat down. This might be for you. Maybe you should stay close. We had smart manhole covers, I think, that we came in. What's the update on that? And how is it helping to cut down on man hours and catching things?
So we only purchased 4 of them, so we have them in strategic locations. So due to the Creamery Road pump station upgrade, one of the locations that we picked is like a main manhole right up from that. So the way that they are designing or way they are functioning, all the new construction there, they're essentially using the pipe as the wet well. So that manhole is now reading the level and it's a fake number. You understand what I'm saying? So we're really only using 3 of the smart manholes at this time. And we were able, the one was getting high trends. We were able to camera that line. They jetted that line, found that nothing was wrong with it. It just needed cleaned. And they're hooked to rain gauges. So everything's moving forward. If we had more of them, that would be great. It's giving us where to look, but we certainly don't know exactly what pipe is the issue.
Sure.
The way it's looking, it's a combined throughout the whole system is, it's just a little bit here and there. There are a couple areas of concern that we're working on, but some more of those would be very helpful.
I just add that I went over and saw all the computer screens, and the data is invaluable because the more that we add to the system, we're gonna know an overflow before it happens and be able to look at that data and be able to compare it to other variables. And it's gonna save a lot of time and money in the long run.
Yeah.
And I do want to add that money ain't spent just for the sewer overflows and things like that. It is collecting it. If we start seeing the trend go up, then we know that there's a backup or something as well. So, and we believe that's what was going to happen out at Northgate, but we were able to go out there and jet that line. So that keeps sewer from backing up in people's homes, things like that. So the tool can be used in multiple ways.
Okay, sounds good. So you can then, do you get some kind of alert if there's?
Yes, we can get
Spiking.
alerts. I can show you that when we do the tour.
Sure,
It's a
yeah.
whole program. We can do everything. I can put you on there. It can call your cell phone if you'd like. It trends up and down. There's graphs. There's all kinds of fun stuff.
Okay. cool.
Yeah. Yeah. You start
Try
getting
something
called at
else.
2 a.m.
Yeah.
Feel a little differently.
Have you found that the locations that you picked seem to be? I think I remember Ms. Willett saying that they could be moved if we wanted them to, but do you feel like those are good?
So, yeah. Now we can move them.
Yeah.
They're not as easily movable as what we anticipated.
Oh, okay.
And plus it ain't just a little gizmo you hook to the manhole, there's programming involved in all that stuff because it needs to know the depth of the manhole, things like that, the size of the pipe. And so it can give you the correct data.
I see. So it can be moved, but it's kind of a pain. It's a big.
Yeah, it's,
rigmarole.
and where we have them, we're happy with. I to be honest, I don't want to move them where they're at. They're in key locations that
Sure.
we're monitoring flow from different neighborhoods, things like that.
Mhm.
So, I would be great to get more of them to keep working on this,
Sure.
but really I wouldn't move them if it was easy to.
That's good to know at
Yeah.
least because,
Other than the one that's right there by the pump station.
right.
But as soon as they get the pump station finished, that one's going to be great.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's
Thank
just
you.
kind of in limbo now.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Mrs. President,
Yes, I'm sorry.
so just for pure clarification, you feel that the smart manhole covers make staffing more efficient because you know where to deploy your folks and when for the reason, like it tells you what the problem's going to be?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can go out. It's just an invaluable tool. So
Okay.
we've never had these things before, and now we can see what's going on. It's just like the water plant having a turbidity meter. We know where the water's dirty and things like that. It's just a great tool to have.
So in a perfect world, how many more would make the system better and help you do what you do regarding monitoring the system? et
I
cetera?
would have to look at our GIS system. I mean, we certainly don't need one at every manhole, you know what I mean? It's mainly the key locations where they're intersecting. And then when you can see, okay, this one's rising, so then we know to go look there. But right now, we'll see one rising. Well, now we have a whole half of a town to go look at.
Right.
You know what I mean? So certainly more, but not, we don't need them at every one.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
And like you said, it doesn't tell you which pipe necessarily. You still, it gives you a clue as to where to look, but you still have,
Yeah, it's looking in that pipe, but it's only looking at this location. So anything upstream from that,
Gotcha.
it's, you know, I mean, we know the problem is upstream,
oh,
but depends, it could be miles of pipe upstream, so we're not sure where to go.
Understood.
But by adding more, it will narrow it down.
Right, so
Right.
if I have one here and then there's one half a mile upstream and that one is fine, then we know the issue is in between the two.
sure. All
So
right.
that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Gotcha. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. President.
Yes, Commissioner
Do we,
Sweeney.
When are we expected to buy some more smart manhole? Tom?
Yes, you'll see that proposed in the FY 25
Budget?
budget.
How
We-
many do you have proposed?
We don't have a number yet.
Oh,
I got to get with Jared and figure out what's realistic and specific locations where he would like to have them.
Is that something we could use ARPA money for?
Yes.
I think we have a little bit of ARPA money since the DePaul Street water line came in under budget, so we should be able to, maybe we can get it out of that and not have to even go into our FY 25 budget.
Along with that, there's and Jared can speak to it more, it's called, it's a surface meter for Rainbow Lake so that we measure the levels like digitally, so they can go in and see where we are with the lake at all times. So that would be something that staff's gonna either look for in the upcoming budget or for ARPA money as well. And when you do go to the water plant, you'll see the board's approved a lot of upgrades over the last couple of years, and you'll see that everything is invaluable and the technology is amazing of what it was when I first started here to where we are now.
Would the stormwater management fee that potentially is coming back on July 1st, correct? Is that something those funds could be used for, is to buy additional smart manhole covers, whatever?
So that would be different. So that's the storm drains. And these are manholes. So they're it's kind of two different ones. That stormwater utility is supposed to be solely for stormwater projects. And we just started a new MS4 permit term in October of 23. It's a 5-year permit term. And Nigeria is working with our consultant to come up with the list of tasks that need to be completed in that permit term. So the goal would be to use any funds raised to put it towards that.
Okay.
I have a question for you. I hope I'm not catching you off guard, but,
Oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think our, being that the 16-inch water lines is high priority, if we go to do that, or we're gonna need connected to the mount, correct?
No,
We won't need the extra water from them if the 16 inches out. Or there'll be a temporary water hooked up.
so we currently have a 10-inch down the line. This 16-inch is separate.
Oh,
So we would be able to remain operational during the construction of that new line.
so there's two lines, a
Correct.
10-inch and a 16.
Yeah, and then once the 16 goes in, we will do away with the 10 altogether.
Oh, okay.
A question for Jared. Somebody said something that had a recollection. How often do you measure the well depth for each well?
Weekly.
Weekly. Perfect, thank you.
There was one thing that I just remembered I forgot to put on one of those slides. Right now, we are only using a little bit over 50% of what we are allowed by the state of our water supply. So our problem being that's all of our water plant can put out, but we still have 40 some percent. Jared, is that?
We're only at 58% of the MD appropriations for the lake and well.
Right, so we can use more water from our sources. Our plant just can't process it.
But there are some upgrades that can be done to the water plant to increase the capacity.
Going back to, I guess it's, if you include this, the title slide, it would be 1, 2, 3, the fourth slide where it says history continued. I'm sure that this was said, and I was trying to frantically write it down, where it says must allocate 342,500 gallons. That was in reference to,
Our current water taps that we have out to our customers.
Okay.
So that 342,000 is what we must be able to give them.
is that with them at max capacity?
No,
So, yeah, so the 1370 are taps that we have allocated out between residential and commercial throughout the entire town. And by the MDE standard of 250 gallons per day per tap, that gives you the 342,500 gallons that we must be able to produce. Because we say we have 1370 taps.
Okay, so that's whether or not the resident is using 250 gallons
Right.
of water. Per,
right.
Right, and
Right.
if you look
Okay.
up at the daily average at 270, 689, not everybody's using their 250
Right.
gallons per day.
Yeah, but we can't allocate that other 70,000
Right.
gallons for more taps. So,
Exactly, because you have to
Mhm.
have it there in
Right.
case you need it.
right.
Right, okay, that was my question. I was just, thank you for that clarification. And how are, the water taps are not something that it's on the town to figure out, that goes into the, is it the engineers who are building the site that will determine how many water taps are needed?
Typically, if it's a commercial site, then the engineer or the plumber has to submit a certification of how many fixtures they have. And based off the fixture count determines how many taps they need. Like Federal Stone, they would have submitted a plumbing certification through their engineer. And based off those fixtures, it was equivalent to 5 taps. Residential is a little bit different. A single family home is generally 1 tap.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's not something that falls back on town staff to have to figure out. That comes with like their building and they submit and whoa,
That's correct.
I talk with my hands. I
We'll put that in next year's budget.
Thank you.
And the taps are by county code. The county sets those numbers. You have to have a slop sink and a janitor's closet and building certain sizes. Well, that counts towards your taps. So that's all set by the county,
Okay,
which we're trying to get changed because it's a big overkill. And
right. I think I vaguely remember that from Christ Community Church when I was on planning committee. I think they were saying they needed a sink and a this and a that, but did they really? Okay. Understood.
And we do understand you're going to have more questions, and we're looking forward to those questions because, this just being a workshop, knowing there was going to be no vote, we wanted to make sure we had as much information as we could. You have, a couple of weeks now to take this home, look at it,
Mhm.
find more questions, get them to us, and we'll get you the answers back. And as we receive questions from the commissioners, we'll we'll send those questions and the responses back to all 5 of you.
So, water tap fees are, obviously something that when we have those water taps being purchased, it helps our water fund. I know there was discussion about the current water tap rate and whether or not it should be increased, or how those are determined. Commissioner Hoover?
Yes, so that's one of my things here for. So I do want to, at some point at a meeting, to go discuss that and talk about, because the current rate for sewer and water taps is definitely far below the actual cost. So what it would take to build that capacity, and it's decreased over the years to, I think we need to look at it again to look at, what it costs to build that plant and divide that up by the number of taps and figure out what the real capacity is. Because right now they're probably closer to about $10,000 or $12,000 cost, but they're only, I think they're $8,000 each per.
It's,
tap.
yeah, it's 8,000 for sewer, 8,200 for water.
So that's something I would like for us to look into to.
The only thing I'll say is that during that rate study, they looked at water, at the tap fees, and they did not recommend
See
raising
that.
them, but that was it's probably been 2 years now. So,
I've seen that in that study that
yeah.
I just didn't know if that just wasn't on their agenda or that just was something for some reason they purposely didn't recommend it.
Yeah, that was part of what they were supposed to look at, and their recommendation was not to raise or lower. So, but being 2 years old, we can certainly take a look at it again.
Yeah, Thermont I think they just doubled all theirs, and that was,
Do you know what they doubled
I-
it to?
I wouldn't say we need to do that, but
gosh, I can't.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the tap fee isn't going to deter a developer because it's really the end user of whoever's buying that property that's going to
Correct.
be hit with that fee.
Right.
So,
but your fee needs to be in line with the actual cost.
correct. So who gets to determine how much it actually, whose job is that?
This board,
This board?
correct.
And we just
In
take
the
a
end.
shot in the, no. I mean, like literally if it's
We-
in line with what it costs to build, right?
Correct. We try.
Right.
As
And
I
have
said,
tried.
the simple math to me is you take the cost of the sewer plant divided by the number of taps that's available from it. And that answer is going to be capacity cost per tap. The short version.
short
I mean,
version,
I'd
yeah.
rather be sewer or water, but I mean, that sewer plant's probably about 35 million.
But then you
and
gotta
The water plant's probably fairly equivalent to that.
throw some in for inflation, no? Little magic dust?
There's always inflation, but you wouldn't look at the inflation today, you look at that down the road with CPI or something like that,
Yeah.
or an annual review or 5-year review or whatever you plan to do.
Okay.
Mrs. President.
Yes, I'm
Madam
sorry,
President,
Commissioner
No,
O'Donnell.
no, all good. Want to coattail on what Mr. Hoover's saying is there's absolutely a need to review it for more than a few reasons. The reality is that, it's good to recover those funds, to repay the town for the expense of the water treatment plant. The other reality is the growth in the county and the need for housing in the county. And I don't want to go down the same road too often, but there's a high probability we will see growth to some degree in our community. There's a possibility of annexation. I know we've had these discussions before on the last board, but moving forward, I anticipate that we're going to see it, just realistically speaking. What I'm learning about housing is there's a trend to make the houses somewhat smaller, not dramatically smaller, but somewhat smaller than what has been offered here traditionally in new construction.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, you might see more households being created, so long as it's aligning with our zoning and what we've planned. But if there is growth in our community, it would be wise to adjust the fees in order to assist the town in its effort to be sustainable with our water services. So basically, if we got more people coming,
Mhm.
big if, but if we have more people coming, the fees should be considered, we should reconsider what our fees are and very likely increase the fees in order to meet the costs that we've already, the outlays we've already made.
Mhm.
But it is coming. Growth is coming our way for sure.
Right.
And just the last spin on it is another thing down in Thurmont you may have seen in the Frederick News Post is not only do their water fees and their tap fees increase and their sewer treatment fees, they're, I think, in consideration now, but their electric fees jumped, I think, by 15%.
Mhm.
So we're not alone in looking at the utility thing and increasing the costs. I think sort of the elephant in the room with what we're looking at regarding, you know, the plan that we've laid out and our consideration of it is, you know, do we want to increase rates this much? And we've gotten a lot of, you know, political fodder from it. We got a lot of feedback from it. But there's a reality that we have fixed costs that we have to address just by keeping staff on board with that latent capacity to rebuild the system if there's a failure in the system.
Mhm.
So I think we need to consider those costs, but also I think in fairness to the community, I don't know that we should go with the 5 or 6 year plan that we put forward, but give it the reconsideration of in 2 years, let's look carefully what we intend to do in the third year. In the third year, I don't think, well, I hope we won't need the jump in the fee that we had been discussing. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So I've talked about a lot of things. I'll be quiet now. So
You don't have to be quiet. It's okay.
On that line, commissioners, one thing that you might want to consider, and it's something the mayor and I have talked about, is looking at your impact fees. That's a general fund.
What line? I'm sorry.
Oh, this is different. This is just, you guys were talking about
Oh, just
fees.
another.
I
train of
just
thought.
wanted to put this out there, that something that you might want to consider in the future is the increase in your and your impact fees. Because right now your impact fees are only $1,200 and it's far below most municipalities in Frederick County. Completely unrelated to this, but I thought I'd throw that in there since you were talking about fees.
Good point.
Commissioner, I do have some numbers from Thermont. I think this looks like a 2023 application. It looks like your water connection fee would be 4,100. Wastewater is 5,000 some odd cents. And then there's a wastewater pump station fee, which is $1,000. Only when routed to a pump station. Okay, that might not, but the impact fees that Ms. Willis was talking about, the water impact fee is 3,400, the wastewater is 39, the road impact fee is 21, and the park impact fee is 14. So they have a whole bunch of impact fees
They
there.
have a
14,000.
sewer connection.
1,400.
So they have a sewer connection and a water connection and a sewer impact and a water impact.
Yes, according to this.
So the two would come together.
According to this. So if they're gonna double that, it looks like their water fee would go from 8 to 16,000
Right, with the impact
that's-
fee.
with the impact fee also, yeah.
So they're about
I'm not sure
75.
how that works, but that's what it's showing there online.
I think when they define something as an impact fee, they have to be very specific about how that money gets applied. So I think maybe that's why they're, what looks like 2, but what looks like 1 is actually 2, and then maybe that's why.
Typically your impact fee would be more related to parks, sidewalks, things of that nature, but more things that the general residents are coming to town that they would utilize that needs maintenance. Now, businesses would not be charged an impact fee, just residential.
Yeah, so here it says the fee increased October 24th of 23, a 50% increase
Sound like a number
will
they
be applied on 10/24/24.
that sound like a number they just pulled out of their head to say 50%.
So
math.
Middletown's is 9,000 for water, 9,000 for sewer, and their improvement fee is 12,000.
Their impact fees are 12,000.
They call it an improvement fee. I just imagine it's about the same. Anyway,
So I do agree that the impact fee should absolutely be looked at. It's been 20 years or more since that's changed.
So at some point, maybe we could lump water tap fees and impact fees together, but not necessarily next month, but before any annexations occur, it seems like that's something that needs to be looked at.
Oh, I agree. And I think,
Mhm.
because I think almost what you have to do if you have somebody that has already put applications in,
Mhm.
you almost have to honor what
Well,
we
yeah.
gave them now. But yeah, it's something we should really look at soon.
Yeah, we
If we
certainly
plan on
don't want
doing
to like,
something.
it
Sure,
would be bad form to go back and say, surprise. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But you also brought up a good point. Whatever we do, it's going to affect the buyer,
Mhm.
not the developer. So.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Okay. Um, and Commissioner O'Donnell, I echo some of your statements when you were saying, you know, I think last year when we were looking at the water rates, we did say at that time we wanted to come back and revisit every year. So this is us making good on that pledge. So, you know, it's just not one of those things where we say we're going to come back to it and then we never really do. So I think this is a good step in the first, I mean, a step in the right direction. Where I guess my question might be is with the changes that we've made. So we found some creative ways to like shift that money and kind of build up that water fund, whether it's that 300,000 from the ARPA. And I think there was a tiny tweak made for, you know, as far as salary or no, not salary, benefits that were shifted out of the water fund. How does that change the trajectory of, because we didn't have that factored in the first time around. So now we have that factored in moving forward. So what does it look like with those things factored in? And then are there any other creative things that we need to be looking at in the meantime? So I know that there were a couple of funds that we found. Is there a creative way to use those things legally? I don't want to, you know, shift money illegally. That's not my intent.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes, legally, I want to clarify.
Well, the one thing, our interest rates are much better now, so we're gaining more interest, and Kim's been working with that and keeping a good eye to get that moved around. So that's sure is going to help.
Are us adjusting the water rates to 36, what we did last year. You can see where it went from 6,000 to 10 and 23, and then for just the 2 months in 24, it jumped to 80,000.
Yeah, the 2 quarters, right?
Yeah, and 2 quarters, that's $40,000 a month extra now we get that we didn't get the last 2 years.
Right, but if you look at what our end goal was, and factoring in the extra money that has been shifted over in addition to what we know was coming in because of the increased rate, like how does that change how quickly we can get to that goal now that we have that money in there?
Well, that's my question. Was there a goal? What was the town trying to achieve additional annually to where they created the rates they did? What was the goal to have additional funding per year?
So I think the
All
goal
said and
was twofold. First off, to have sustainable rates
Mhm.
that your water fund, your sewer fund were self-sufficient.
Mhm.
Because at the time when we started looking at this, our rates were not enough to sustain your water fund, and that's why your water fund depleted each year. So it was twofold. It was making sure that we had rates that were competitive with similar systems so that we could continue to get funding for our projects. And then 2 is to establish a reserve, because at the time we did not have a reserve. So I think the goal was twofold.
Was there the reserve amount? Was there a set
It was,
goal, I guess you'd say?
it was a 90-day reserve. I'd have to go back and look through the study to see what that number was. I don't recall. off the
I
top of
don't
my
know what
head.
that equals, but.
Yeah.
Probably a couple $100,000 or something.
Yeah, yes.
Didn't we not get funding due to the state of the loan back because the water fund was
So we were not eligible for funding on certain projects through USDA because our rates, and that would be the clarifier project. That's why we went the bond through Senator Howe's office and then the ARPA money. Because when we reached out to them at the time, that our rates were too low, and they don't provide funding if your rates aren't self-sustaining.
Right.
It's not, as to quote them, they're not their responsibility to fund water projects and water funds.
That are going to fail.
Right.
So that was, so I understand like the 90-day reserve from what I was reading on the website is a goal, it's ideal, but for smaller municipalities, from what I was reading, it seemed more like a 45-day reserve was more feasible. So that's something. It doesn't seem like there's like a hard and fast answer as far as, you know, a number that we're getting that we're aiming for. So it wasn't high enough, meaning high enough to be self-sustaining is one thing, but also have a 90-day reserve, or we're aiming for a 45-day reserve. And what do other municipalities, are they aiming as far as their reserve?
So the 90-day came from the rate study. That was what was recommended by the consultant at the time. Through their research and their studies, they said that was the quote unquote industry standard. The idea of the reserve is for these emergency water line repairs, that probably the one on, for example, on Annandale Road, that was 26,000. I can't remember. 26,000. We have another one on Annandale Road. That's going to be roughly 13,000. We just came across one on Timber Mill Run. So those are things that we can't budget for because we don't know. And that's the goal of having that reserve, so that we do have the money to pay for them.
Right.
What the industry standard is, I would just went off what the consultant said. He said 90 days.
Yeah, I
Obviously
remember.
it can't hurt to have a large reserve, but
Right. I guess where
it
I'm,
can't be unrealistic.
I wouldn't want to
Correct.
see us go below 90 days. I'd support 180.
so I guess where I'm
Or
getting
reserve.
at is, do we continue to do 36% over 5 years? I know there was a talk about, do we maybe look at it after year 2 or year 3 or whenever that may be?
I certainly would like to see us have a discussion at a meeting where we can take a vote, but my reason I asked some of the questions, the reason I think we was having this meeting was discuss the rates and the possibilities of what to do, what not to do, change, not change, whatever it may be, but you know, based on the slides that we have, you know, the first year you should get $200,000 in round numbers more than you got last year, based on what you've seen so far.
Right, but that also doesn't take into some of the expenses. So you're not going to see that 200,000
Right.
there, right?
I'm not disputing that. But then, you know, so then the second year, you would see an additional 275, plus don't forget, you'd also have your already 2.
Mhm.
So you'd be like, in round numbers again, you'd be around $478,000 additional annually.
Mhm.
And then third year, you jump up your, when you put them all 3 together, you got 650 left, you know, an additional to what you have in 2023. And it gets to the point in the 5 years, you've got $2 million that you're collecting more than you was in 2023. And that's why I asked, you know, how much of a reserve and how much more do we need? The 36% is just, I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me, as everybody already knows.
It doesn't sit well with,
But-
with me
but,
either.
I'm not saying
I
we
had a
should-
problem voting for that also.
I'm not saying that there should or shouldn't be a rate increase. I don't believe that I would like to see 36% again. And one of the other things, like I said in the previous meeting, I also don't want to see a 5-year increase that just carries out the way it was done. It carries out with no action. I do believe that the board should have to take an action to make sure that they're still desiring to do that. The 3% increase, for perpetuity as the way it lays out now, I think down the road, that's a good ideal. I think somewhere we got to get kind of balanced out. When I looked at the report, and Mr. Mayor, I think I said this to you before, but I didn't see anything about a 36% for 5 consecutive years. It had some things in there, like one year was 40%, and then it went to the 3%. I think it might have even had one that might have been 2 years at 40%, and then it went to 3%. It just,
You're talking about the rate, I'm sorry. You're talking about the rate study.
The
rate
study.
study, Yeah.
so it never mentioned a 36% for 5 consecutive years in what I got
Right. No, that was a decision by the board
at that time.
at that time,
Right.
because
That's fine.
the one recommendation was like 120% increase over 1 year. And then the
No.
options that he had given they were much higher than the 36% at 5 years.
I seen I remember there was one that was at 40% for 1 year, and it might have been one for 40% for 2 consecutive years. But that was the worst I've seen, but to have 36% for 5 consecutive years.
No, this was a watered down version because what they proposed was outlandish. It was just, it was terrible.
I got your,
It was terrible.
But according.
this report I was given about it.
Jim, where did you get your 200,000 each year? Because the way I added
In the
up,
slide.
if it's $40,000 a month, extra
Not a month,
more,
not a month,
this is a month. I'm
Quarter.
going monthly.
quarter,
No, this is not a quarter. This is
2 quarters.
January and February. Just January and February, we went up $80,000.
No, that's
Where?
fiscal year 24.
Where are you looking at?
The first 2
Commissioner?
months of the 24. We went from
What's he reading?
No worries.
$300,000 ARPA, correct?
Where's he at?
$16,000 or I would say almost 18,000 is 22 and 23.
No, the year starts July 1st, not January 1st.
Right.
That's
I know
what,
that, but for the first 2 months, they only have the first 2 months down.
no, they don't. 2024 starts July 1st.
Oh, they don't have quarters. I'm sorry.
So this is 2 quarters.
I was trying to figure out where you.
Your,
got
your
200,000.
February 29th would have been your second billing cycle, probably ended by then. Or
Right. So right there, I think it looks like about $40,000 a quarter that we took in. So we had an additional $80,000.
So,
Yeah.
so Cliff and Commissioner Sweeney, where I got the numbers that I gave was, it's in the slide. That's what
Yeah,
they used
I was
as
doing
estimates.
monthly.
but-
I didn't do it quarterly.
So that's why.
I can tell you, what we had this discussion with staff and we also agree that the 5-year thing, we cannot put that on our citizens. We would be very, very happy with doing the 2 years and then going with a real, very, very small increase, 1 to 2% after that. So we don't get back into the same shape that we were before.
Because I think once you get it stable, for lack of better words, then kind of look at it as a CPI kind of thing annually.
Yep.
Whatever the CPI is in May of each year, that's what it becomes. And so that's the amount of increase you make it in July or whatever.
Because the 300,000 really helped us. That was a nice
Oh,
shot
no
in the
doubt.
arm.
No doubt.
That was a nice shot in the arm.
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
thank you. I want to go back to the question about the industry standard
Mhm.
and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And I think this addresses Mr. Hoover's question about, where did that number come from? I called the USDA about their loan program and their interactions with municipalities like ours. So I spoke to somebody who did more or less the small town grant and loan program. So their language was this. The USDA expects municipalities receiving grants or taking loans to operate their enterprise funds as a business to meet the needs of operation and maintenance, O&M. The municipality must set aside 25% or 90 days as a reserve of the enterprise fund budget. A short-term consequence. So for example, if a community has taken funds from the USDA and does not maintain that 90-day reserve, these are the consequences in the short term. A short-term consequence might involve direct federal USDA supervision of town actions, including budgeting. So they would have the right to step in and run how we run our money. So that would be if we took money in a grant or a loan, they would step in and run the show, which is something we certainly want to avoid. The other long-term consequence, not related to their stepping in, would be it might, so it's conditional, might involve a loss of opportunities such as losing USDA grant opportunities and losing USDA loan opportunities.
Mhm.
So they set the 90-day standard. That's what they had said.
I'm in favor of that.
Oh,
Like I said-
okay,
like
all
I said, I would support I
Okay.
would support 180.
180, I know. And but the question came up, where did it come from? We didn't just pull it from the air. It
I'm
wasn't just.
well aware of that.
It wasn't just the.
I'm well aware of it.
Okay, it wasn't just the consultant who said it. It's just.
Yeah, you
USDA.
know, it's fine, because when I was looking on USDA, I saw different numbers. And
Well,
um,
yeah.
90-day reserve aside, I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna argue that at this point. I guess my question is we fell below the 90-day reserve. There was a chart once upon a time that showed us when that was. Ms. Mills, do you remember what year we fell below the 90-day reserve? It was my so you don't have to look it up.
Yeah, I don't recall
But-
off my head,
You-
last year.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so whatever that year was, yes, one of the consequences could be that they would take over, but what is the timeline on that? So.
We
um,
we have not had any USDA funding for water infrastructure projects in many, many years. They continue to fund water or sewer projects because sewer fund does well.
It should be so reassuring to know the federal government's going to help us set a budget. How many months later they?
Well, I mean, if we only
They
fell
haven't said it yet. I
below
mean,
the reserve last year, whenever that
Mm.
was, what would make us ineligible before that? Would it also?
It
be
has been
the-
longer than that. I don't have
Yeah,
that
I know,
chart.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, like, if, in my head, if we were below that for a few years,
You'd be in trouble.
right?
which I think we have been.
Uh-huh.
And that's probably what prompted the conversation that I had when we were looking at the water clarifier, but I'll go back and find the chart,
Okay,
and send that to everybody.
yeah.
Just
be-
gotta-
I-
I
and
had to track
it's-
it down.
And it's not like, I guess my point is, does that mean the county would swoop in then? Like they could have,
Not the county.
not the county? or I'm
Federal
sorry,
government,
federal
no, the
government
federal,
could
state.
swoop
that's what
in.
I'm saying. That was
So
kind
at
of a
what
joke.
point does the
Private
federal
estate.
government swoop in? Or we're just over here like crossing our fingers and toes that they don't notice us until we get up to our 90-day reserve?
What I was trying to say, they can't set their own budget, so they're going to come and do
Right,
ours.
like-
Yeah.
So,
The conversations I've had with
State
them
will
is
come in.
they're very, very nice people, but as long as you're working towards things,
Mhm.
They're accommodating
right,
mhm,
within reason.
yes.
okay.
I guess my bottom line goal is to know every night when we close the office up, if we have a major catastrophic failure, either at the water plant or a water line, that we're going to be able to attend to it.
Mhm.
Which is also why I said earlier. is
And I
that-
shouldn't have said that. I apologize for saying.
But to add into, like I said earlier, is that was one of the reasons we discussed way back when, is that the Mount St. Mary water would never be treated as capacity. So if you had it, go back several years back when the old hotel burned, if it wasn't for Mount St. Mary's, we would not have had sufficient water for the town and the fire. You had to increase water from the mount. over and above the 100.
No, we just opened up the reducing valves, correct?
No, we increased Mount St. Mary's water by over 100,000 a day, that day.
Right.
Because Pembroke originally lost water
Yeah, we know.
and, but. So, but
So, but going back to the 400 taps potentially from Mount St. Mary's, that was just a hypothetical, correct? We're not looking at that right now as 400 additional.
No, just as an option, but that's what we can get from them if that, it's something we should look at to say, hey, is that going to be a better deal for us than, maybe not 400 taps, but having that 100,000 a day and getting 100 taps off of it and still having that extra supply coming to town. So it's just an option of something we can look at. we sure wouldn't want to use all of it, but it could get us 100 taps and still have a surplus.
You'd have to be reassured then that you're going to be able to get a contract from them.
Yeah, we're going to go back and talk with them.
You still got about 20
Um,
years on the current one, but
Yeah, well, they're putting a new plan in. So we're
I
going to
think
go
there's
back
some
and talk
partnership
with them with a
opportunities.
partnership there and see what we can do with that.
so, but
Are we hurting by not having that water coming from Mount St. Mary's right now? Didn't really, it's not really making, okay.
what's the amount of reduction for the fire academy? Since, based on pre-COVID? gotta be a lot.
That's what we actually used FEMA's reduction during COVID, the 300,000 for revenue replacement. That's how we came up with the
The majority-
recommended amount for ARPA,
The-
because that's about what we lost just from FEMA alone in water. And they're still not back to where they were.
Right.
What's really going to help us though is with the provincial house filling up with the Mount activities, the seminary and the healthcare school opening. That's going to bring several hundred more students that'll be living there and using water every day. So that'll help us.
We probably don't need to make any additional count on fixture count there, do we? I mean, it was kind of dorm rooms to begin with.
Yeah, they were dorm rooms. So, it's basically taking
Same
where,
thing.
where the daughters lived and then the nursing home part of it. And so they all had their own bathrooms and things like that. So cafeteria was already, all that was there before.
Yeah, they already had a huge capacity already.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I said, I mean, well, one of the big things I wanted to get out of this meeting was my goal was that we have a discussion in a meeting as to what do we do with the rates? And, my opinion is, just one of five. So, but I would like us to have a discussion and what do we do? What's best for the town as well as the town government, as well as the town citizens, and what's the best way to go? And what's the best rate? But, we're not here to make motions and moves tonight, but I think we should have some additional discussion, but we're going to have it sooner rather than later because, I don't want to wait to June 15th and tell staff, there's no money. No.
So
I
basically.
don't plan on saying that though.
So basically, just whenever you're discussing water rates or sewer rates, that requires public hearings and advertising notices. It's essentially you're starting all over again from where you were a year ago.
Not for the discussion part, if we were going to raise or lower, correct.
If it's a discussion, if you're voting on the water rate,
Right, but if
You're
we're
voting
just
what-
having a discussion, we don't have to have a public hearing, correct?
if it's discussion only,
Right.
but once you
Okay.
move to wanting to vote,
I think she's trying to get the timeline down if you want it done before.
right, if
Right.
you're gonna vote, it has to be a public hearing. There's the advertising requirements. Yeah, so. And as you know, the board gets the draft budget at the first meeting in May, which is May 6th. And then the full presentation of the budget, the May 20th town meeting. And the budget has to be adopted by June 30th. My town clerk goes out on maternity leave April 19th, so a lot of the prep work's gonna fall on me, so sooner than later would be helpful.
Additional questions or comments about discussion and review of the water
I
rates?
think that's all my questions that I had here.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just a straw poll. Does the board anticipate that we're going to be raising water rates?
More than 36%?
No,
Oh.
that we're going to be raising water rates.
Are you asking us to go down the line and just tell you our thoughts right now?
Sure. If not, I don't need a percentage, but I'm just curious to make sure if I understand what the board members are thinking.
I am still unsure because I want to see how do these current numbers affect our trajectory. So that's the part that I still don't have my head wrapped around. Since we added more by making those changes, what does that look like? How does that, we did get a shot in the arm. But what does that look like over 5 years with the jump that we took?
So
So,
unfortunately, that's a question for the budget. And I won't know full trajectory until I start putting the numbers in for next fiscal year for 25. And looking at, the changes of positions, taking Jess out of water and putting her in general fund and moving Sabrina and myself to
mhm.
sewer into general fund, and then some of the changes that have been made. So that 300,000, it's going to roll into your reserves
Sure.
because it's going to lessen the burden of your utility fees. But as far as the overall impact, until we start putting the numbers in for the budget, I can't tell you for sure with 100% certainty the overall impact.
Right. That's why I'm floating that out now, because
Yeah.
that's something that I'm interested in to help guide that decision. So that was the piece that I was looking for, Commissioner O'Donnell. I mean, maybe we play the numbers out and we're like, oh, it didn't really change that much. Or maybe it did. I don't know. That's why I wanted to bring it up to talk about before June.
I'm not in favor of raising them, so you.
No, I
Maybe
mean,
that-
you mean higher than
that's what he
36?
wanted, that I don't
Oh,
wanna
no,
raise them
no,
any more
please,
than-
no.
No more raising. no
I'm
more
not
raising.
looking to go above 36, if that's what you were asking.
No, I'm
Okay.
just wondering if there's an interest in increasing the water rate, just to find out if there's an interest in increasing the water rate.
You mean sticking with the 36?
Not necessarily.
Or
I
even
mean,
above
Any
36?
increase.
any increase
Oh.
whatsoever.
Oh,
Oh, I think there's got to be something.
oh, you mean as opposed to like no increase at all?
Correct.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, I think personally, there needs to be something. I'm just, what that looks like, I don't know. I don't have enough information.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, I'm not looking for that answer. And I don't mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even intimate that, just,
yeah,
okay, sort of a up or
Yeah.
down.
yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. It'd be probably
I am, sure.
premature to say 0.
Right, well, I was thinking about with the 36%, no, I didn't want to go up any higher, but she won't know that until she gets the.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's just,
Right.
it's, I won't say it's impossible, but it's very challenging to try to figure out an impact of an entire year when you only have 2 quarters under your belt and some expenses are front loaded, some expenses are backloaded. Water usage and things change depending on spring, fall, winter, summer, months. There's just so many variables when it comes to it. So,
And that was one thing that crossed my mind is I would imagine we're going to see some people decreasing their water usage because of the increase. I know we used to have a
Mhm.
really big garden that we would water during the summer. We're going, we're not going that route this year. So
That's what rain barrels are good for.
what did you say, rainbows?
Rain barrels.
Oh,
That's
rain
what They're
barrels,
good for.
yes. But needless to say, like if we have people who start cutting back on water usage because of the increase, I'm sorry, I'm very distracted by the back corner right now. Thank you. Now I lost my train of thought.
well, that's what happened when they did the large rate increase, rate increase for the larger high-end users in 2000 something or other. The larger users cut back or they put in water efficient like toilets and things of that nature. So people do make adjustments.
Right.
Um,
Have you noticed, it's probably too soon to tell. Overall, has usage been about the same since the rates went up? Or is it too
it's
soon?
looking at the average usage. So what I did when we figured these numbers out up there, we took the average usage for the first 2 quarters of the rate increase. And then to compare, we went back and looked and most of them are right about the same.
Mhm.
They haven't felt the impact.
Um,
Probably not.
you are in the winter months.
It's
So there's probably less water usage than in the summer.
Commissioner, how about yourself?
Um, 56% of Emmitsburg is at the Alice poverty level and below that. So I think to put another 36% increase on the residents is going to create a large hardship for a lot of people.
I'm not asking that. I'm just asking about just increasing the rate.
No,
If, so no increase whatsoever.
no.
Okay, thank you.
And, can I continue?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. I
Um,
didn't want to put you on the spot for the 36% piece.
Yeah, I don't, I think we need to look at other things within our budget before we raise it 36% or raise it at all. For interest, for example, the interest income that's coming into the water and sewer fund. I think we should look at that. We have, I don't know, approximately $6 or $7 million in our water and sewer fund. But I'm not convinced that all of the interest that we're earning at the bank is going back into the appropriate fund.
I can guarantee you it is. I don't like that accusation that we're moving money where it's not supposed to be.
Well,
moved.
25%.
So I don't like that.
I said I'm not convinced. It wasn't an accusation. If you look at our
Pretty close to being.
if you look at our FY24 budget, we can't see that number. Now, perhaps it is, but we can't see that in the budget number that we get. My understanding is 50% of the interest goes to the general fund and 25% goes to the water and 25% goes to the sewer. Correct? That's not a ratio that equals out to $6 million. So all I'm saying is we need to look at our numbers. The percentage of salary, I'm not making any accusations, Mayor. But I'm saying we need to look at our numbers. The percentage of salaries that are charged, that were estimated to be charged in FY24 to the water and sewer fund. We've already exceeded those percentages so far for FY24. So far.
No, that's not a true statement. We just reviewed the budget.
It's right here in
We-
the report that was shared at the workshop.
We just reviewed the budget last week for the quarters and we're right on target.
The percentages here from FY24 budget estimate and the FY24 actuals to date, we've exceeded what was estimated so far in the FY24 budget. This report was provided at the workshop. I wasn't on the board when we approved, when the water rate increases were approved. So I would like to ask the other commissioners, was it your intent to approve a 217% increase for a 1.5 inch meter for year one? Was that your intent? The numbers are all here in the ordinance that everybody approved. For a 3/4 inch meter for FY24, the increase was 36%, correct? For a 1 inch meter, the increase for FY24 was 76%. All you have to do is do the math. It's all here. The 1.5 inch meter, the FY24 increase was 217%. Was that the intent when the ordinance was passed? Or did the commissioners, I don't know. For a 2 inch meter, 154%. If you use between 10 and 20,000 gallons, the rate increase was 63%. So the numbers are the numbers. I don't know what else to say. I'm saying that we need to look at the numbers carefully to see, do we have any wiggle room?
And we are looking at the numbers very carefully. And the other thing you've got to take into consideration, we just showed you somewhere between 15 and $20 million worth of projects that we have in a failing infrastructure that we need to find money to fix. And we don't have that. So you can say, yeah, we have a couple $100,000 here. That's not going to touch any of those projects. One project would wipe us out again. So
Right.
we still have those projects. So just because we have a couple $100,000 hasn't fixed our problem. And no, I am dead set against doing a 5-year 36%, dead set against that. But we also can't just say, we're not going to do it anymore. I mean, when you look at the numbers for the majority of the people, that it's 36 cents a day, and that hasn't been raised since 2006. Now, that's not unreasonable. That's, I can't help that we have people that are struggling. We're struggling as a town, and we're committed as a group of people to provide a service, and we can't do that for free. You know, it's just something we can't do. So when you think of 36 cents a day over the last, what would it be, 20 years, 18 years, that's not a big increase at all. That's not, that's pennies. And we're still cheaper than our two surrounding towns, Thurmont and Tawnytown. We're still cheaper even after this first 36% increase.
I think what I'm hearing is that there is a desire for the commissioners to understand fully the numbers that they're presented so that they can make the best decision moving forward. And Commissioner Turnquist, you were not here when that vote went through. And as we're talking about it this time, I'm sure that there is an enormous responsibility weighing on those of you who are new to the board as far as, you know, let me get the numbers straight. What does it look like moving forward? And just making sure that when we ask the questions about the numbers, that it makes sense in our head. I think that's where it's coming from. And also, you're right. It does depend on the user as far as how much they're using and how much that rate would be, because you could say 36 cents a day, but it really depends on your usage and your overages and such. So you could say what's on average, but the people on the high end of that average might be feeling it more than those on the low end of the average and such. So yes, we can look at the average. I think it's okay for us to ask questions so that we can look at the numbers and completely understand. Putting it into a spreadsheet is something similar that I did last year. And when you do plug the numbers into the spreadsheet, it is eye-opening. And I think that goes back to looking at a pledge that we made when we were when you were commissioner as well. And we had a few other faces on the board as far as we want to continue to look to see what other creative options we can also bring to the table. So I don't think it's a matter of, I think it's a matter of commissioners trying to wrap their heads around the numbers and understanding it fully, and also wanting to have a collaborative approach between the town and the board so that we can find if something else is out there that we can do to help. So like little things like shifting things from benefits from water over into general was helpful. Finding that 300,000 was helpful. So that's where I'm coming from, is what else can we do that we haven't looked at yet? And
I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
so
As long as we're not moving the problem from one fund to the next.
exactly,
Which we moved $70,000 worth of benefits from the sewer fund
right.
to the general fund.
Right.
Now, is that going to cut us short in the general fund?
It, you know, if
You
you
know,
look at
so
it that
it-
way, it's like, you can't move your problem.
Exactly.
Where does the problem belong? Like, where should it be? And we shouldn't float that problem based on what fund has the most money. So if it's supposed to be out of this fund and that fund is struggling, then we need to address that fund. But, so I don't see it necessarily as making a new problem so much as bringing to light where our problems actually are.
Well, maybe it's going to mean to lower the sewer rate and up the general tax rate to get more money into your general fund. You know, because you can't
I understand. And I'm not saying that,
dump that fund.
I understand. And maybe we do need to look, that's why we're asking the questions. The questions so that we can get a full picture of where, if you put things where they belong, what is the reality? And what does that mean? So maybe it's more than just the water fund that's in trouble. And that is our due diligence as a board, is to ask those questions and figure this out. So it's not coming from a place of, it's coming from a place of understanding, and I would hope that we could move forward in the spirit of collaboration.
And we're willing to do that as long as we're not being accused of things that we're not doing. That's what bothers me.
No, it's not an accusation. It's a, we need to look at it. Mayor Davis, the sewer increase that took effect last year that was approved here. For a 1-inch meter, the FY '24 increase was 59%. The 2-inch meter increase was 255%. So if you're suggesting that we shouldn't look at things and ask questions, we can't raise the rates another 36% if we haven't fixed what we've already got.
I'm sorry.
Those are the numbers. I'm sorry.
For the next 5 years.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. Additional questions, that what I'm gathering from this is there still is questions that we want to have clarified and revisited before, so we can have a clear understanding when we want to look for creative options moving forward. Any other questions regarding the water rates at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're moving on to agenda item number 2, which is water capacity. I don't know if that's something that's, we kind of
We did not.
hit
was
that
in the- yeah,
already.
That was in the slide.
Yeah,
We did
Oh, that's
that in the
there.
slide.
yeah. So I think I've officially have to say agenda item 2, this is what it was. So any additional questions or comments on that? Okay, hearing none. Okay, so looking at the agenda for setting the agenda for April 1st.
Didn't we do that?
I do, I have,
We've done that last.
I do have one thing to add.
Well, it's on here. It's on my agenda.
Yeah, we set the agenda at the March meeting, but I do have, I can go back through them all.
Yes, please.
For administrative business, you have for consideration proclamation declaring April 2024 Child Abuse Prevention Month. Number 2, for consideration proclamation declaring April 22nd, 2024 Earth Day in the town of Emmitsburg. Number 3, for consideration proclamation declaring April Fair Housing Month. Agenda items, there are 7. Number 1, approval of the water treatment plant clarifier construction bid for consideration. Number 2, approval of bid for engineering services for the Emmitsburg Dam inspection as required by MDE for consideration. Number 3, approval of FY '23 budget transfers for consideration. Number 4, approval of ordinance 24-01 to amend Title 10 vehicles allowing 48-hour parking on East and West Main Street for consideration. Number 5, approval of ordinance 24-02 to amend Title 10 to remove the red citation box from the square for consideration. Number 6, approval of policy 24-01 parking meter fees for consideration. This would increase parking meter fees to 25 cents per 30 minutes, 50 cents per hour. And number 7, approval of estimate for Rainbow Lake Pump House Bridge replacement for consideration.
You said Pump House Bridge.
Rainbow Lake Pump House Bridge replacement.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. So the one that was newly added was number 6, correct? The parking meter fees,
Number 6 and then number 7,
number 7. Okay,
both of them.
okay. All right. Commissioners, any other items that you're hoping to bring up for April? No. Do we want to go ahead and have a workshop in April? I know we're also working around some holidays coming up. Should be over by then.
Workshop to discuss what, please?
I don't know.
Would it be okay if we were to consider it in the April, the first April meeting?
Yes, I like that.
Okay, so
Thank you, Commissioner
I thought-
O'Donnell.
What is it?
He said, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear.
He said maybe we can consider that at the April meeting, whether or not there needs to be a workshop 2 weeks after that. And I'm good with that. I'm fine with that. Okay. All right, so if you already voted on the agenda, we don't need to vote again? then?
I would, since we did add number 7.
Okay,
I make a motion to amend the April 6th, I'm sorry, I don't have the date,
April 1st.
April 1st, oh dear. Town meeting agenda as presented.
Mhm.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. And I believe
Nothing to sign.
I had nothing to sign, so
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned as of, what is it, 8:42 PM.